Deafheaven, Sunbather. To their detractors, they remain hipster metal, posers who blacken the genre's name, and not in a good way. But I think a lot of the ire directed at Deafheaven is at a cosmetic level. They don't really write about evil stuff, a couple of them are quite handsome, Pitchfork likes them, and they appeal to a much wider audience than the genre's traditional base. If only they would murder one or two people or just burn the odd church, they wouldn't be getting any grief at all. So my advice is to ignore the haters. Deafheaven's shoegaze-inflected black metal broke new ground, and Sunbather remains a high watermark.
Beherit, drawing down the moon. Something of an outlier when compared to other seminal albums of the 90s. Beherit's take on BM largely forgoes breakneck tempos, larynx shredding screams, tremolo picking and blast beats, for something deeper, doomier, and altogether more ambient, leaning heavily into electronics and synths. A deeply dark and occult LP from start to finish. This one's all about atmosphere, albeit the kind of atmosphere you'd find at a seance. Drawing Down the Moon is a singular entry in the black metal canon, and to this day casts a real spell.
Bathory, The Return. Venom might have named the genre, and Celtic Frost, Creator, and many others contributed to the sound, aesthetic, and attitude. But it was Bathory's second album that brought the sound of black metal into sharp, warts-and-all focus for the very first time. For anyone interested in black metal, this is mandatory listening, mandatory listening, mandatory listening, mandatory listening, mandatory.
Darkthrone, Transilvanian Hunger. Influential beyond measure, Darkthrone's fourth LP is as close to concentrated black metal as you're going to find. A bitterly cold atmosphere, a guitar tone that will leave your ears ringing for days, and vocals located somewhere between a rasping snarl and a bloody choke. Production doesn't even apply here. This album wasn't produced, it was recorded. For better and for worse, their early albums are the dictionary definition of black metal. For better, because, if nothing else, listening to those early LPs will give you an instant education on what orthodox black metal sounds like. Even if you don't dig it, you get it. On the other hand, it does take some work on your part. Transilvanian Hunger doesn't come to you. You have to make your own way through the frozen Arctic wilderness to it. But for those who are prepared to make the journey, there are rewards. Harsh, abrasive, and unrefined it may be, but give this album enough time and those distorted, billowing riffs start to pull you in, and you begin to notice a subtle hypnotic groove pulsing through the album's veins. Transylvanian Hunger might keep you at arm's length, but after repeated listens you may find the hand of that arm resting on your shoulder with a vice-like, icy grip. 1184. Combining traditional folk with forward-thinking ambient, almost techno-esque elements, Windir's third album had one foot in the pagan past, the other kicking down the door to the future. Sometimes, as with the opener Todeswalzer and closer Journey to the End, within the same song. But present and past blend seamlessly together, bound by peerless melodic songcraft and an infectious, relentless, festive energy.
Drudkh, Blood in Our Wells. So much of BM only feels appropriate to listen to at 2 o'clock in the morning, alone, with beer, a big bag of weed, some meat, and a big knife, which you consider using on things from time to time. Not so the case with Blood in Our Wells. Drudkh had this very expansive, open-hearted, dare I even say uplifting take on metal. And this album sounds just as good incarcerated on your own, with the lights out, as it does driving through the countryside with the windows down, lying in a hammock at the beach, daydreaming in the office, or just lifting weights at the gym. It just works everywhere. Peste Noire again. I guarantee you've never heard anything like this before. Hardcore punk, prog, Gallic folk, electronic beats. There's very little that isn't puked over the wall. Hello! It's been 3 years since I recorded Black Metal 5, and a lot of great music's been released in that time. So, what I thought I'd do is I'd pop the video on pause once again and run through an alternative list of albums and artists that have been released in that time who aren't openly fascist. Unfortunately, when it came time to compile this revised list, it did occur to me by its conclusion that quite a few artists here shared members with or had links to far-right groups, underscores, yet again, just how hard it is to listen to black metal without encountering any dodgy politics along the way. With that in mind, here we go. Ascension, Under Ether. Fantastic riffs and face-melting solos abound in this professional, well-produced modern headbanger. More proof that Ascension are one of the most underrated groups out there. Svedana, Svedjaland. Chug your head and bang a beer to this raw, straight-up black metal party album. Spectral Wound, Infernal Decadence. This is really nasty, ferocious, primal stuff here. Tears through you like that shit's on a hovercraft. Zealand Ardor, Stranger Fruit, a heady mix of gospel, soul and blues with explosive bursts of sheet metal, black metal. Stranger Fruit is true to its name and a great example of how malleable the genre can be. Craft, white noise, black metal. A late career peak for these Swedish veterans, a masterclass in icy cold, super tight second wave. Death Fortress, Reign of the Unending. These guys rule. Imagine a gnarlier hate forest minus the fascism and you're half the way there. Listen to all of their albums and worship them! Alterage, The Approaching Roar. Alterage's brand of black and death breaks over you like a tsunami and pulls you down, down into the darkest depths of the ocean and drowns you with no remorse. Devilmaster, Satan Spits on Children of Light. I do like black and punk a lot, and few do it better or with as much gusto as Devilmaster. Tons of fun.
Drudkh, a few lines in archaic Ukrainian. Compiled from various split EPs, this holds together as well as any full length they've ever put out, and cements their position as one of the genre's greatest bands.
Deathspell Omega, The Furnaces of Palin and Jessia. The legendary pioneers return with one of their very best albums. Discordant, jarring, and somewhat jazzy, it's easy to lose yourself in this labyrinth-like LP.
Misbearing, Al Jimmy. A blitzkrieg of churning riffs, gravelly, spittle-fleck vocals, and insanely infectious songwriting. Vorda. I said few do it better, but Vorda are one of those few. Man, they've got to be one of the most underrated groups out there. And this fleshes out their brand of black metal punk, with some tasty thrash flourishes. Mugwar, Age of Excuse. To my mind, Mugwar's best LP yet. Killer riffs, super dark, super bleak, yet weirdly uplifting, an instant classic. Asgaram, Dawn of Infinite Fire. This all-female Dutch band calls to mind second-wave giants like Immortal and Gorgoroth, but with a 21st century twist. Lots of fun, and the punishing intensity does not let up for a moment. Pisage d'hiver, involved. As my dear friend Danny Fenster once said, the Radiohead of shit music. This was my soundtrack to the coup in Myanmar, and it was very, very, very appropriate. Kven, The Funeral Pyre. Not especially dark or even heavy by genre standards, just great songwriting and great guitar work. Onasi Pazuzu, Mestarin Kunsi. This is what you get when you double drop on both acid and black metal. Odraza, a modern, forward-thinking black metal album with a tough, sinewy sound that doesn't sacrifice brawn for brains. Liturgy, Origin of the Alamonies. This is very different, experimental, quite out there. I don't really care what the purists think. I think this is good stuff. The Ruins of Beherit, the Thule Grimoires, epic, proggy and doomy with stadium-sized rift and a distinct eastern vibe. Canon Fever, Menschmüller, sick riffs and blast beats along with a World War I theme. As it's all in German, I have no idea what they're on about, but you know, we all know that World War I was, it was pretty bad. Mare Cognitum, Solar Paroxysm. I already did an amazing review of Mare Cognitum back in the first video where I was floating in a pipe. Can't possibly top that, so not going to try. That will be quite sufficient. Thank you. Ara, Triad 1, Eos. Everything that makes black metal, turned up to 11. This is sick. Spectral Wound again with a Diabolic Thirst. They haven't updated their sound in any meaningful way on this album. It's just straight back on that hovercraft with diarrhea, and yeah, you got the shits. Violet Cold, Empire of Love. What do you call LGBTQI friendly black gays? A step in the right direction. And that's it. 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 That's it. That's it. That's it. That's
a real tour de force.
Right, let's do Bathory, Under the Sign of the Black Mark.
It is very influential. I mean, it's enormously influential on the genre, but it's not. That's not the reason that you should listen to it, and that's not the reason that it's a great album. It's a great album for the same reason that makes any great album a great album. It's got lots of great songs, and Under the Sign of the Black Mark is full of them.
From the primitive thrash of Woman of Dark Desires to the bells of Enter the Eternal Fire to the atmospheric masterclass of 13 Candles. This isn't just one for black metal historians. Any fan of heavy music should be able to enjoy it and should hear it.
Nifelheim, Servants of Darkness. While Nifelheim's musical dialect is located somewhere north of the Arctic Circle, their mother tongue dates back much further, to the days of classic rock, metal and punk. If you're a fan of Back in Black era AC/DC or Ace of Spades era Motorhead, or even further back to proto-punk LPs like Raw Power by the Stooges, then this is probably your jam. If you found the nihilistic white noise intensity of some of the classic LPs unapproachable, Servants of Darkness welcomes you in, with old school heavy metal thrills and an overabundance of hook-filled catchy blackened anthems.
Don't stay away, oh brother and sister. When you see hypocrites and monsters like this, it's time to break them down. It's time to rumble.
Kvist only made one album, then promptly vanished into the fog of obscurity. But if your debut album's this good, why stick around? Kvist! This album is a marvel. Unpredictable and with a Kvist! And though the album does generate a sense of
Dread and foreboding.
it's also an album awash with creativity and ideas, full of doors, keyboards. Why stick around? Subtle melodic shifts and spidery riffs that keep catching you off guard and knocking you off balance. In the end, it doesn't really matter that Kvist disappeared after this album, or that they're almost completely unknown outside of cliquey internet forums. With their one and only album, they created a real outsider art statement, one that'll long outlive the musicians who made it. Fake blood in my mouth.